All right. All right, so being 6 o'clock, I'm going to call the meeting to order. All right. First on the agenda is the public hearing on acceptance of 5,000 donations from the Gibson Woodbury Foundation to be used for the playground.
You just want to open public hearing.
Okay, sorry.
Public, have any questions?
You guys have any questions? It's good news.
I can just clarify. It's
Sure, thank you.
specifically to use not for the new playset area, but for a couple of accessible pieces of playground equipment for near the blacktop area. Because we realized last year we didn't have any universal designed elements for it.
Thank you.
Thanks for getting that.
Okay.
One last call,
Anybody else? No, we're good?
close the public hearing.
All right, closing the public hearing. Approved minutes from 8/3/23 and 8/21/23.
Make a motion to approve minutes.
Second. All those in favor? All right. Citizen comments? What do you guys? Okay. Presentation.
I'm gonna, can I,
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
I just, I was not sure if the citizen letter was mine or if not, but I sent a letter and I wanted to, read the letter. Thank you for including it in the minutes, but just so that it was on, record for the public, for those that didn't go through all of the minutes. So, my letter was, dated August 9th. The members of the Jackson School Board, I am writing to express my concern about the recent Jackson School Board meeting of August 3rd. Over the last year, I and other members of the Jackson community have repeatedly asked the school board for greater transparency and communication. This is not only essential to healthy relationships between the school board and the community it serves, but is required by New Hampshire state law. I also understand that the meeting on August 3rd was organized in large part in response to concerns raised about the Jackson School Board's non-compliance with RSA 91A, which sets standards for transparency. I am concerned because the lack of communication around the August 3rd meeting seems to fit into a pattern of extremely poor transparency and perhaps RSA 91A violations by the Jackson School Board. These include 1, notification of the meeting. All other Jackson School Board meetings are announced to the community via Jackson e-News and are posted on the Jackson Grammar School website. The August 3rd meeting was not announced in either of these locations. Notification for the August 3rd meeting was apparently publicly in only one location and did not appear in locations typically accessed by the Jackson community. 2, publication of an agenda. No agenda was distributed prior to the August 3rd school board meeting. 3, publication of meeting materials. The August 3rd meeting relied extensively on materials provided to members of the Jackson School Board by the New Hampshire School Board Association. These materials were not provided in advance or at the time of the meeting to the Jackson public. Materials include, at minimum, a slide presentation produced by NHSBA, New Hampshire RSA text relevant to the presentation, and other documents referred to during the meeting. I understand that there are occasions in which mistakes occur, and good faith attempts are made to correct them promptly. More concerning is when those same mistakes are repeated and where attempts at remediation are absent. The trust and confidence of the Jackson community relies on a school board that operates in good faith and in public view. I respectfully request that you create an agenda item specifically devoted to RSA 91A violations during the public session at the September school board meeting. I further request that you acknowledge RSA 91A violations that have occurred and be prepared to describe a detailed plan to repair the damage that those actions have created in your relationships with the Jackson community. please make this letter a matter of public record. Thank you. And thank you for your time and service. And I wrote this letter really because I hope that the RSA 91 violations that occurred for the meeting that was about problems with RSA 91A violations would be a great opportunity to really look at very recent concrete problems that are part of a larger pattern. I did bring screenshots of the JGS community events calendar that I took on August 3rd that show no meeting. The JGS public Facebook page would show no mention of the August 3rd meeting, and the JGS website community calendar would show no information about that meeting. So, thank you.
Thank you. We do have you on the agenda to discuss the letter.
Great.
All right, so we're gonna move on and we'll circle back. Okay?
Thank you.
Any other citizen comments? Okay, presentation of school programs?
I have Victoria Hill here tonight, who's going to present on her role.
I have a handout that is for school board members. It's not a handout that I'm going to share with the audience because I think there may be a few items on here that are identifiable as being specific to a particular student. So I'm just going to talk in general about what's in here. So I'm Victoria Hill. I am the school counselor and the family advocate here in Jackson. And tonight I'm going to talk specifically about the family advocate role for kids in grades 7 through 12. This position allows me to work with all of our kids as they leave our school and they move on to Bartlett Middle School and Kennett High School. And it's been in place for about 3 years now. Well, exactly 3 years now. This is the start of the 4th year. And I've learned over the years about what has garnered the greatest feedback from parents and also the most participation from the students in grades 7 through 12. And I did a survey of the guidance departments at Bartlett and Kennett High School and the principals. And so the plan that I presented to you guys is based on those 3 years of learning experiences plus the survey. And I actually think now that I have done this survey, I'd like to put it out to the 7th through 12th grade parents too and see if their responses align with the staff. That'll be interesting to do. So this is actually the first year that we have a group of students entering Kennett High School that I've been working with extensively since they were in elementary school, and I think that is the greatest part of this position, that I've been able to follow a couple of families that need some extra help as they've left here and gone through all 3 schools. That continuity of care, I think, is something really special for kids that need it. I've also found in the past few years that what garners a lot of interest is me participating in, as a member of wraparound teams for students that have a lot of outside services and acting as sort of a communication liaison between the schools and the outside agencies, because that can get tricky when there are lots of people involved. Participating on IEP or 504 teams as a support to families. Oftentimes they have a lot of questions about the process or how things are working, and sometimes I can provide them with some good answers to those questions. Transition support, I think, is something that has come up particularly with our kids going from 8th through 9th grade, and so that's something that I've taken some kids on some private tours or on some small group tours when they were particularly nervous, or answered a lot of questions about course selection, which is a tricky thing for people when they're going from 8th through 9th grade. So what I want, I probably did this in backwards order, but I put out this survey to the other counselors and the principals that have our students when they leave here. And I asked them to choose among 10 or 11 different things to find out if what they feel is the most beneficial for our students aligns with what I've been offering for the last few years. And you can take a look at those choices on here, and I can tell you that the results were interesting because overwhelmingly every single staff member voted for the same 3 things. what they feel like our kids need the most in Bartlett, and Kenneth is meeting individually with students who require additional mental health or social supports. That's probably not a surprise to anybody if you read the news about the amount of mental struggles that our teenagers are having. We have kids that are struggling, and our high school counselors spend a good deal of their time doing college and career counseling, course selection, and scheduling, and they don't have a lot of time in their day to do regular check-ins with kids who need it. The second thing was serving as a team member for students with wraparound services or IEPs. And if you guys aren't familiar with what wraparound services are, sometimes we have multiple agencies involved with a single family, and we get together and have meetings where we coordinate care for those students. And the last thing was serving as a liaison between school and outside services, which really is keeping the lines of communication open. That's how that was different from the previous one. So I combined the results of this survey with what I learned over the last few years, and what I wrote up for you was anticipated duties for 7th through 12th grade family advocate work on here. And this is where I'm not going to read everything that's on here, because I feel like some of it is a little bit private, but just to highlight some of the things I'll be doing. On Tuesdays I go to Kennett High School and I meet with some of our students there. That was really fun to do. Last week, and have them say, "Oh my gosh, you're here at the high school." That felt really nice. Attending regular meetings with the SAU 9 family liaison. So all of the elementary schools and the middle schools have a family liaison. We get together once a month and we talk about changes to policies or new services that are available, and make sure that we're all on board with providing the best possible care to our families. Advocating for additional programming and specifically extracurricular activities for middle and high school students. That's one I put on there because there have been some concerns about the lack of extracurricular activities for our 7th and 8th grade students. And so I've been working on that one at the request of a particular family. Meeting weekly with high school students, I just mentioned that. Serving as a liaison for an out-of-district placement, and specifically as a support for the family as they try to communicate with all the various agencies who are involved. Skip a few of those. Collaborating on Jackson-specific ELO opportunities in conjunction with Christine Thompson. I've already been communicating with her. We are creating a bank of special opportunities here in this town for our Jackson students who are at the high school. I put that out in e-news. I heard back from Kate, but if any of the rest of you feel like you have a great skill, small business ownership, it's a really neat opportunity to provide our high school kids with credit opportunities outside of the regular classroom. Offering additional transition support for 8th grade students, I touched on that briefly, and planning our transition activities for 6th graders moving to the middle school. Mrs. Messer mentioned getting some feedback about families wishing that we add up a little bit more, so I'm going to take that on. And then there were the things that I skipped. That is all I could think of to say. Do you guys have questions? Public speaking is not my forte. I feel like I just start babbling, but if you have specific questions, I will be trying to answer them for you.
You're doing an excellent job. No, this is great. It's good to get you up here in the beginning of the year to get out all the things that you're doing, any changes to your program, so this is really helpful.
So if you guys digest this and you think of questions later, just email me.
First, I just want to say thank you, because I know I had asked about you, and then you just appeared the next meeting. So thank you, because that was really responsive. So
You're welcome. That's actually Mrs. Messer.
Yeah, so thank you. That's really awesome. I just a couple of questions. How many responses did you get to the survey?
So there were 7 staff that I surveyed. I got 6 responses.
As far as the options you gave them, were they obviously some would be pre-programmed, and right, you gave them some, and then did you get any that were sort of like option extra?
So they had a choice of other, and nobody actually chose other.
Gotcha.
One person did follow up. It was Mr. Rihanna at the middle school. He said, I completed the survey as though we currently have a family liaison in Bartlett, but because we don't, I would also want you to add these following things. So that was the one piece of extra information that
Great.
I got.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is this the first year you're going to the high school?
Yeah, so it used to be that I went to the middle school to work with some students, and now they have moved up to the high school. So it's kind of nice to see the progression.
With the students as the position grows?
Yes.
One more question. So obviously you've got some significant contact with some students. Are you in touch with all the students, 7 through 12, or how do you?
I'm in contact with all the students and all their families at some point through the year. Many of them I don't hear back from. They tend to be families of students who are doing well. But yes, at some point, like our 7th grade families and our 9th grade families all got an email at the start of the year. Let me tell you about my position. Here is some of the help that I could offer to you. 12th graders will get information, making sure that they know about all the important 12th grade events and scholarships and senior activities. So yes, at some point there's contact with all families. We also have tried in the past holiday liaisons to offer virtual family series to get some information out to families. Those have been typically not very well attended. But that was an evening attempt to reach everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else, Erin?
Not for that section.
Old business?
No.
Instructional issues?
No.
Personnel actions, we have one, election of Hannah Lucy as mentor.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Great. That's awesome. Business affairs, we have the 23-24 business budget status report. I can put those two words together. Kevin?
Yeah, no, this is just, right now, obviously, we're a month into the school year, so everything is, and we're short a staff member, so you'll see that, hopefully we get to fill that, but you'll see there's some pluses in that piece right there. The next piece is a summary of expenses and receipts. So if you flip to that part of the agenda, this is the end of the year books. Remember, the fiscal year for school districts begins July 1st and closes the books on June 30th. Our office then goes through the process of breaking everything down, paying all the bills, closing out everything. Later on, you're going to see the MS-25 and the DOE-25. Those are the financial reports that go to the state for approval. How that's developed is through this process here. So if you take a look on the first page, there's you budget $2.8 million and you spent $2.7 million. So as far as your budget and what you spent, your $58,000 was left over. So of that entire budget, that's pretty tight. That's good. I mean, but you can see there are different pieces. Special education, you overexpended that by $65,000, and you'll see some places there were some savings regarding, the overall, all of your staffing in those pieces there. So overall, pretty good budget as far as expending it. And then you flip to, remember the budget is quite a few parts to it. One is what you expend, and then the other part is what you get for revenue. And revenue comes from a number of different ways. Your taxes is considered revenue, right? So your district appropriation, and that's what it is. It's a zero balance whatsoever. Interest earned. Bridget in the finance office at the SAU did a really good job of moving things around, and you'll see $11,000 to the good for Jackson. So previously you're talking less than $1,000, but because she was aggressive in working with the banks and some of those pieces, that was a good piece. Adequacy grant counts as your revenue. The state tax is retained. You'll see private tuition. That came in. That was a plus on the revenue side of things. Rental property. you'll see some of those other pieces, so your total revenue plus is $44,000. So what that means is that at the end of the year, you had between the expenditures and the revenue, your fund balance was $139,274. So that is, that's your financial end of the year piece. So the next item on your agenda is 8C. And because you had a warrant article back in 2018, and we'll talk about this during the budget season, there was an article that went before the legislative body, the public, that asked for approval to retain up to 2.5% of your final year net assessment. Since then, new laws have gone into place and you can keep up to 5%. So we'll talk about that during the budget season. You can use that money according to the other RSA 198(4)(b)(2) for emergency purposes. So for example, if you had a fuel tank that needed to be replaced, it's going to cost you way more than $60,000, probably several $100,000, but you could use that money. If your compressor broke and you needed to replace that, what you have to do is you have to get approval from the Department of Revenue and Administration at the state, but also your town selectmen have to approve it. So that's contingent upon the RSA the way that it was for 2.5%. Historically, you've retained that money, but the board can decide to keep all $60,400. You could keep $30,000 if you choose to, or you could turn it all back. If you don't retain it, it just goes back to offset taxes. On the previous sheet, you'll see you did do the same thing last year. Okay, so that's up to you, but somebody will need to make a motion to consider retaining it, and then you can discuss it and have your questions.
Make a motion.
Your motion?
Yes.
For what?
Well, you can make
To
a motion.
retain the balance?
Well, it's I think it's premature for a motion, because we don't know when we're retaining anything. Because I'm going to recommend that we actually don't retain anything.
Okay.
So last year, we had retained at least $25,000 to offset. So we don't use that fund for emergency purposes. We're well-funded in our capital reserve funds and our expendable trust funds for emergencies and things like that. So what we had retained it for last year was to add to our special education fund. And so we would give that money back this year is how we offset the taxes. We use it more to balance the taxes than we do for emergency reasons. And I don't know what our current balance is in the special education fund, but it's getting up there, and I think that we can probably appropriate the rest in taxes that we're trying to get it to, which I think is about $250,000. Kind of is what we're trying to do. So I don't think we need to retain anything this year to offset taxes for next year, is what I'm saying. So I would recommend that we don't retain any of it. But if others feel differently, I have no problem with retaining some. It's just.
Pam, can we call on you to hear what you have to say as far as the special education goes? Because it sounds like you were
Special
over.
education fund, I'm not prepared to tell you exactly, it's about 200 or 225 right now. I think you're okay with that. I think when we talk about what the budget's gonna look like for FY '25, you may want to consider bumping it up, but I'll have more information for you.
This wouldn't qualify for special education costs.
Right, this is.
No, we don't. Again, sorry, we don't use it to pay the special education costs. We use it to offset the tax rate when we appropriate the money in March. So it's offset, we kind of, it's a placeholder for the following year, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what we done last year. We retained at least $25,000, so that when we got to here this year, we could use it to offset taxes in October, when the selectmen set the tax rate by using their undesignated fund balance. And because our capital reserve fund for our education fund's getting up there, I think that we can, if 250 is our target goal, we can do that through appropriations next year.
I'm good with returning it all.
Yeah, we were positive of 139, this year, right? And that, I'm just confirming what you said, which was root to the positive, 139, 274.50.
So if you chose to do nothing,
Right.
right, $139,000 would go back to offset your taxes.
Okay,
And some of that is what we retained from last year.
right.
Is what was, no, I think it was more than that.
But we retain 50, right?
Yeah, I thought we retained 50 as well.
That's what my records show, so.
Which I was gonna say, like, so we weren't using that fund to fund special education, it was a placeholder to offset taxes.
So basically, we could just allow it to nothing, and this would be an FYI, and then we could just move forward.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if we don't retain anything, then we would do nothing.
So just to answer your question, Jerry, you have $210,000 in your special ed trust fund, $138,000 in your school bus fund, $91,000 in your maintenance fund, $108,000 in your tuition, and about $53,000 in the Whitney Center maintenance that you'll be talking about later.
Can I ask a question about the special education fund?
Is it a quick one?
Yeah, what is it for?
If I might.
Yeah.
So if a student moves in, your budget is already set for this year. So let's say a student moved in and they had some services, could be a one-to-one aid, it could be an out-of-district placement. You don't have that money in your budget currently. So you would have a public hearing and you would say, we need to provide a one-to-one, or we need to provide services, could be any services whatsoever. You have a public hearing and then you draw from that to pay off those bills. If you didn't have money, there are different ways that you could do that, but typically at your meeting, your annual meeting, you might have a deficit article. So if you knew a family of four moved in and two had some significant needs, let's say it was $120,000, you could have an article on your warrant to say, we need to have this deficit article of $120,000 to pay off those bills.
Makes sense, that's a good question.
So we're doing nothing then? We're not going to be retaining funds?
No retaining.
Correction.
Okay?
We have the signing.
Yeah, before everybody leaves tonight, please, I need 2 documents signed.
School lunch program?
Yeah, you can see in here, your school lunch program does cost you money typically. And you'll see the cost about where the ballpark was for last year, $14,000.
Can I just ask a quick question about the school district profile, the expenditures per pupil?
I'm sorry, I have a hearing issue, so this room is acoustically extremely hard. So
Gotcha, sorry, it was like so hard to know, but I don't want to seem like I'm yelling at you. So, the current expenditures per pupil in the reporting document, when does that get filled in? Because we have to end up filing that, right? So per pupil for each school.
So the
You have
state piece?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's in there.
Once these documents go
Yeah,
to the state,
right,
that's used for, absolutely, per pupil cost. It's also used to set your tax rates,
right.
to take into consideration all of the adequacy aid. So that's why there's a big push that they have. This has to be done by October 1st.
Okay, so just when we'll get, it's not filled in on the page 32 of our packet, it's not filled in on that. When will we get those actual numbers?
Oh, that has to go through the state. They do their whole
They'll send
piece.
it back.
Typically, we do not get that from them until late November,
Okay.
December.
Got it, okay, thanks.
Accept donation of $5,000 from the Gibson Woodbury Foundation. Need to make a motion?
Motion to accept the $5,000 from the Bear Foundation.
Second. All those in favor? Thank you. That's lovely. All right, Kevin?
Yep, a couple things, just off agenda. Kennett High School has their 100 celebration this week on Thursday and, Friday and Saturday. So Friday, big parade down through Conway, and the alumni, it'll be a big deal, huge fireworks that will take place. They're expecting a big crowd for that, food trucks, concert, Just a great community event celebrating the 100th year. Also on Saturday, again back for homecoming, all the fields, the games, fundraisers, tours of the building. The Alumni Center is open, so if anybody's looking for something to do that is a community base, I encourage you to head on down to that. There are a couple of meetings coming up. This Thursday, you have the SAU 9 and SAU 13 Joint Board, just a reminder. And then the SAU 9 Executive Board meeting is next Thursday at 6 o'clock, and those take place at the Professional Development Center. So as far as, unless anybody has any questions about those. Budget direction for 2024 in our office, we're actually sending out memos to begin the budget development process. We'll be meeting with Erin. She'll be starting to develop that and work with our office. So I always appeal to the boards to say if there's anything specific that you would like Erin, myself, administration to take a look at. Now is a good time to do that, rather than developing a budget and then coming back and saying, oh, we didn't want that. So if there's anything that the board has for guidance, we could take a look at that.
I think we can cover that in our goal setting meeting. If we want to discuss that. I don't know.
Historically, this board, just for new, old, senior members, not old, experienced members. Jackson's been very supportive. I think that Erin has been through the budget process a number of times. We have a historical perspective on these things. We do keep an eye on the enrollment pieces, staffing, respond to your strategic planning goals, and take that into consideration. After Erin takes a stab at it and works with Pam, special education, all those pieces, transportation, then we invite budget committee members from the board to come down, take a look before it comes to the board. Jackson's a little bit later than some of the other boards, but usually it works out pretty well.
Probably the biggest factor for that, Kevin, is I thought that our biggest discrepancy in the budget from year to year is our tuition payments to Bartlett and Kennett, which are beyond our control. Our budget here and our growth was pretty steady, and we're on that needed kind of direction from the board usually, but that's kind of why it's always been kind of like what we want to have more. Like the tuition piece we have no control over, so it's like that's what causes the biggest swings in our budget from year to year for the most part. So unless we're doing some kind of large building project, this would kind of be the time that we wouldn't think about that. So if being on the facility committee, if there's a direction the board wants to go with facilities other than beyond the playground, we want to know that as soon as we get into it.
The other item I have here is the assistant superintendent search. So I brought it up at the last meeting, I'll bring it up again. There is a slot for one Jackson School Board member. Doesn't have to be filled, but there is a slot for a Jackson Board member. That will actually take place. I have some preliminary dates, the beginning of October. Usually we have a meeting to go over the whole process, take a look at the applicants, and rate the applicants, and then we'll have a meeting the following week. I think the first one's October 4th, the second one's October 10th or 11th, and then choose candidates that we'd like to interview, and then hopefully interview the following week, which is, that's a full day, depending on how many candidates they have. So you can reach out to me if you'd like to sit in on that committee.
Does anybody want to sit on that committee?
If not, that's fine as well.
All right, I'll sit.
Okay.
I'll do it, or Jerry. You want to do that one?
Well, I'd prefer not to do the superintendent one.
I'm doing it. Yeah.
Okay, so I wouldn't mind doing the assistant superintendent one.
Great.
Great.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Could you give us a little update on the superintendent committee?
Sure. It's really in a holding pattern. It'll start being advertised later in October, beginning of November. I have one member from the Jackson community who reached out to sit on that. I think there's a list of about 5 community members who would like to sit on there. So at the October, I think it's 12th SAU 9 board meeting, those candidates will come and the SAU 9 board will take a look at that. It's reviewed the qualities at the SAU 9 level with the boards. And then really I'm out of that. I kind of facilitate that, but we'll start advertising. There'll be some drafts of what the advertisements will look like to be reviewed in October by the full board, and then away we go, right? So.
Thanks.
And that's it for me right now.
Great, thank you. Erin?
First, I just want to note one change on the report from when it was submitted, just enrollment total from 40 to 39, so that was a change since I submitted it. Just want to touch on the beginning of school as far as the school openings go. We had a really smooth opening to school. I've been in the classrooms quite a bit, and what I see is super engaged kiddos getting right into learning, very happy. So it's been a real pleasure getting to know the students and the families. And there's an excitement. We're really playing off our theme of community, learning, community, and fun. And all we do, we have 2 all-school meetings under our belt. So Thursdays is our all-school meetings. Come join us. They're pretty awesome. I do want to say we started soccer last week in Richmond. We have great parent volunteers that we're grateful for. We still are, we still don't have some staff, but I do want to commend the staff that we do have here. It is excellent. Everyone has really stepped up where they needed to make sure that students' needs are being met, and that's exactly what's happening. People are being flexible, students are well adapted, and they're enjoying learning. So I'm very appreciative of the staff that is willing to go above and beyond their roles. So that's what's making it pretty successful. I did send out a survey to parents to gather some feedback. As of this report, I had 23, so I just wanted to give you some preliminary. When I have as much data as I think I will have, I will share that with you. So my intent is to administer the same survey fall and spring, or the same one over multiple years, just to kind of gather data, respond to that feedback, and kind of look where the trends are. etc. So I was happy to get the responses that I did get back for that. And the only other thing is, just what Kevin said, we are marching Friday in the parade. We have a little Jackson contingency. So if people want to come join us, I will keep pushing out that information. So we're super excited to be part of that. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Erin, can you just speak directly to what the open positions are? I think it might be helpful at the board meeting to just have, some of us know, but some people don't have that.
So we still have the classroom teacher, library media specialist, and reading specialist.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
We're still trying.
Yeah. And how's that been going? Have there been, has there been continued interest or has it slowed down considerably because of the
It's
service?
slowed down considerably. I think time into
Yeah.
time of year, it has slowed down.
Yeah.
But we'll keep trying.
How are you navigating not having a reading specialist with those needs?
We're pulling from the expertise we have in the building and addressing the needs. So I'm working closely with special educator, classroom teachers, etc. We're lucky, I think we're very lucky for the ratio of, certified adults we have in the building with our student population. So I think that's really important to making sure their needs are being met.
Yes. Again, another awesome report. It's really helpful to someone who doesn't have their kids at the school anymore. It really gives a good feeling of what is happening. So thank you for that. I was just sort of peeking back at the minutes from last month, and it looked like we had a projected enrollment of 41 students, but now we're down to 39. So can you kind of speak to what happened, so that I don't need details, but meaning, is there something we would need to know about as far as that's actually a jump for us? So is that something the board would need to know about as far as what is going on in the community?
I don't believe so.
No. You don't need to know.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, that's it.
I've heard great things, so thank you. Yep.
Okay, also another question, so the survey that you put out, it looked like there was a lot of really positive responses. What are you doing with the data as far as ones that weren't so positive? How are you managing that?
For example, I'm just looking at what maybe isn't positive and ways to address that
Okay,
specifically. Like I said, I don't have them all back yet, and
okay,
there is very few,
right, and it's a very small total number.
extremely small.
Just.
So I'll use that feedback to make changes, to, reach out if need be, if it's applicable for that. to
Were they
address.
anonymous, or would you know who put in the responses so you would be able to reach out?
Everyone put their response, put their email.
Oh, okay, so you would know. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Erin. Anything else? Okay, board member committee reports, policy committee. I missed the meeting today, we do not have one. Personnel committee,
Now, we need to get with the schedule as we move into budget season. And I think there's some other pieces we want to take a look at.
facility transportation.
I think the Victoria meeting, tomorrow or Thursday, do you know, yeah, with the playground committee,
I think it's the 28th,
28th,
Thursday, the 28th.
Thursday, 28th, we're meeting for the playground committee.
The high school options. I think we're gonna discuss that during the goal setting session as to what the board wants to do. That's my understanding.
Are we gonna discuss that? When is the goal setting meeting that
We
we're
have
talking
to,
about?
we have to.
Okay, I'm just aware that we have like a deadline coming up with high school options, so I want to make sure that we're,
So actually, at the last meeting, we talked about withdrawing from the, opting out of the contract down in Conway, which is both a recommendation from the previous iteration of the committee, as well as, I believe, Kevin had suggested that's, because that would just trigger the ability for us to start having conversations. So if I'm wrong about that, Kevin, please correct me. But my understanding is that that would be something that would be to the benefit of our board. And so that's something I'd be interested in doing as soon as possible, so that we can start to get things in motion as far as having conversations with Conway and understanding what our ability is as far as negotiations, especially given the fact that we're going to be meeting with Bartlett next month, and I know they're having similar conversations at their board level. They're wondering whether they should be negotiating as individuals, should they be negotiating with other boards, and we're sort of in a similar time frame to what they're doing. You know, some of the boards kind of came out of the gate and are going, right? We're not there, but I would definitely want to be respectful of the fact that there are people, there are other boards that are getting information, and we may have more leverage, or may get more information, or may get access to information earlier if we start moving now. So I'm interested to hear what people have to say about that.
So I'll let Jerry, if you want to take that.
So-
Thanks.
At some point before June 30th, we should make a motion to withdraw from the contract. When that happens, as far as the other things you're talking about, really is irrelevant. So we could do that right now if we want to, or we could do that in June if we want to.
Right.
None of those things, that doesn't have anything at all to do with the high school options committee and how we plan to negotiate for that. So they're kind of independent of each other. One's basically a formality that we have to do, the other is work. So we can do that anytime we want to. We can do it
Okay,
right
I'll
now.
make a motion to withdraw from the Conway contract.
And the only thing I would caution about that is we should make sure we do that properly. So if that's the proper way to do it, I don't know if it is, but.
Yeah, really, just make a motion to opt out
Sure.
of the current contract.
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion from the other members? No? All right, all those in favor of opting out of the Kent contract? It's due to expire in June. Conway said. Okay.
I can draft a letter, send it out to you folks, and then
The contract's not set to expire, or
Right.
the date to notify about withdrawing is
Right.
June 30th. So
Yeah. Okay.
So,
it doesn't nullify the contract will be through 2027.
Correct, yes, we still have time. Yeah.
so however, whatever semantics you want to use in tandem with that, I'm hopeful that we're going to get a plan as a board it would be nice to get it before we're meeting with the Bartlett Board next month, to at least know what we'd like to do before we go in to meet with them. But if people feel that we need to wait for strategic planning session, majority rules here, right? So, but I would like to hear what people have to say tonight as far as what those next steps might be. Because the Bartlett meeting is next month, right?
Yep, the joint board meeting is next month.
My understanding about where we've gotten to with this process is that there's a question as to whether or not we have to have a committee again, or whether or not we can just collate the information that's been created, take another step beyond what was done, and then be able to talk about it as a board. So I would think that right now, we can, like, if we can get into action and move forward and draft off of some of the really good work that's been done, like presented by Tamworth and presented by others, and say, hey, here's what we know. I feel like beating this around in terms of committee and back to committee just extends everybody's time and the energy that they're putting on it. So I know we've had offers from the community to, you know, help support putting that together, or that we could do that as a board. I know, you know, Jess was deeply involved in that work, and obviously Darlene was too. So I don't want to wait until we do a goal setting. I just know how hard it can be for us to grab that extra time. I just like to have a document that says, here are the options, here's what we think we should, and then be able to have a real conversation as a board. As someone who hasn't been involved in the high school option committee thus far, I feel like I'm kind of, there's like this pending conversation that I never quite get to have because we keep having this situation with the committee. So it's like, can we get there and can we do it soon? It seems like it's a pretty small jump to get us ready to have something that's like tidy and ready for us to dive into.
Well, I think Jerry and Darlene made a good point last meeting, which was that there was some information presented, so there was at least that to go on. And I don't know, after thinking about what you all said, I think we could move forward without having another committee or having another aggregation of information. We could take that and move forward with our own conversation at board meetings, like we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think at this point it's fairly simple given what's going on. I don't know, what do you think, Darlene?
You know, it's hard to, you know, to kind of explain it, but the way the one committee was to be done by May 15th. And then we accumulated the information. We absolutely had some blips, but what we accumulated was presented actually in April and again in May. So that committee is done with their information. So now you have that information. I would hate to see you have to go all the way back to square one and start,
Yes.
you know, making calls to Freiburg, and, you know, numbers are numbers, you know, in the day of Googling, you can Google and see how many students are there. You know, 781, I'm just throwing a number out, 781 versus 732. It's not a big, you know, in the realm of things. You know, it gives you kind of comparison. So I think you've got some basic information. I agree that, you know, starting from scratch, forming a whole group of new people, it just seems like, you know, we spent, as you well know, we spent a great deal of time, Kate, you know, putting the information together. And, you know, it seems that we should be able to take that and somehow go with it. And in what form, I don't know.
So about the form, I think that we have this opportunity where what I saw, I think we could give an upgrade from what we have. And what I'm wondering, and especially if we're going to be sharing this to the public, and I think being very sensitive to demonstrating our process and also like helping people understand how the thoughtfulness that's been put into it. So Jess, and then just like throw you on the bus for a moment here, because you were so deeply involved in it, and you also know like the Tamworth document, like, is there a way that we could take what was presented to the board and make it like a little bit more public usable? Because it would help me too, to be able to say, merge that and then have that ready for us to be in conversation. I know Sasha had also offered to be able to do that. I also know Sasha's going through something that she might not have the time to do that right now. And so I'm gonna personally just share that that's probably not something that we can ask her, although she had been until a week ago, like, hey, I'll catch it and I'll turn it back up to you. So I'm more trying to figure out who,
Yeah,
like, how we
I
get
mean,
something.
I think we can actually keep it more simple than that, and you guys can weigh in on this. I think at this point, we could, as a board, figure out who might be the people that we would want to go and negotiate and to talk to both, any places that we actually would like on the table as far as possibilities, and get the real numbers. And
What do you mean, who means which schools?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which schools, or whatever possibilities, and get whatever information. And then independently, as board members, if if we have information we want to bring back, we do that. And we move that forward in a month or two, and we kind of take it from there at this point, because the reality is we can get the numbers off of a website, but Freiburg's numbers might not add up to what they really are, because personally, I think special education and transportation are going to be humongous factors in any decisions we make, because we want to make sure that every kid has access to whatever options we provide, right? And it's the same thing for Kemet, and it's the same thing for whatever other options might be on people's minds. So, and I think we also just need to be really no hold what the options are, in fact, because, and what it will mean for taxpayers and for students and for our board. So, that's kind of where I'm at.
I would agree with that fully, and I think that's kind of where we go with this. And the one thing I think that we need to add to that is, where does the board want to move in the direction of these things? Like, what do we consider as, like, are we planning to provide transportation to all of the kids that are attending high school or not? I, for one, say, that's a baseline for me, that we would provide transportation for all of our students to at high school that they're attending. And just full transparency here, I mean, I'm 100% in favor of sending our kids to Conway, to Kennett. There's a lot of high that from people. What's that?
Why?
That's
We're
going to be a long conversation that we'll have through the years.
We're not on citizen comments right now.
Oh,
Thank you. We're just having the board discussion. Okay.
But that's a valid question, yes.
Yeah.
That we will, that we'll talk, over time here. One of my biggest concerns in this whole process, though, is that there's been no coordination between all the sending things yet. And that, to me, is presenting a problem, and because we haven't talked to Freiburg, because we haven't talked to Jack Frost, we haven't talked to Gorham, we haven't talked to Molten Borough Academy, we have no idea whether they do take our students or not. What if Freiburg decides to take all Canmore students?
Right.
They would probably say no to Jackson students. How many students can Jack Frost take? Do we want to send all of our kids to the same school, or are we going to give parents an option on where they send their children? Those are things I think that I would like to have some resolve on.
Yeah.
Before we move the process much more forward.
So how can we do that? Because I feel like this is the conversation, like, instead of not having the conversation or placeholding it later, can we get more clarity on that now?
I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and then who carries it? I always want to know, like, where does this land, right? Like, who's responsible for sorting that?
Not raising their hand, to take the lead on it, but I think we're at the point where we do need to go out. What we did in the months, the last 12 months, is look at the numbers and look at the information from the schools. And now we really need to go out to those people. And we've got people I know that are willing to do that, that would go to Freiburg and, have that sit down. The conversations that I had with Freiburg or someone else when I was doing the research were just cursory. And, yeah, sure, we'll take your students, but that's not a genuine commitment to really, here's 40
Yeah, I mean, I think
kids.
at the point where we need to go and say, okay,
Yeah,
these
and
are
what would it
the
look like?
projected numbers that we'd be looking at. What would it mean if you were the sole designee of our students? What would it mean if it would be a shared contract with another school? What would it mean if it was just an opt-in for any student who wants to do it? What would special ed look like? What would transportation look like? What would any of the parameters that we want? And get it in writing from them so that we know that that's what they're going to commit to if that's what we agree to, right? And it would be the same thing with Conway. And, as far as the other sending towns, Jerry, I agree with that. We're all so stilted right now. I was just reading all of Town Board's notes. They are, they are back to looking at what the culture is going to be like if they were to move their kids from Kennett. So they're still engaging the public in what's it going to look like, feel like, and sound like if we're not a SAU 9 community anymore, because they're seriously thinking of moving their kids out of Kennett. So they're in a very different space than we are, because we don't even have the hard data, So maybe the starting point might be for us to talk to Bartlett next month and say, where are you guys at? And do you want to negotiate together, or do you want to negotiate individually? Because Kevin can probably speak to this better than I can, but the Conway Daily Sun, which is a very reliable source of information, I know 100% truth comes out of that every single time, reports that they are thinking that they might be only negotiating individually. So maybe we verify that. Is Bartlett going to go in alone, or would they want to? And would that matter? I mean, it's still not like we're sending a ton of kids.
I think that's a valid thing to pursue further. But one thing I think is important to understand too is that this isn't going to be the board that's going to decide this issue. It may not even be the next board. It could be. But if we establish what we see as a premise, as a baseline for what we said, so I mean, I guess I'll ask the question, are we in favor of, is transportation a non-starter for anybody else? Like, to me, it's a non-starter. I am only in support of, we will transport art students to high school via buses. Is that something that we're comfortable with as a board, or is that something that we need to do more
I think
information about?
we have to be able to, transport our students.
Honestly. I mean, I do, we have all these different transportation options, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to say the transportation is a non-starter, we would have to look at what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Because you can give students an option. There are districts that give students an option, and then they basically have a taxi service that will bring them to the 2 or 3 local schools that they go to. So that they do provide the option, they guarantee transportation, but it's not going to one location, so.
So this board then won't resolve that issue, and that's okay, so we shouldn't waste our time on it.
Yeah, so, but, and.
Which also makes starting negotiations kind of difficult, because we don't know where we're going with things, so.
Well, actually, I think, instead of worrying about who's going to make the decision, I think what we have to think about is the townspeople are the ones who are going to need the information, and it's the memory of the investigation that we want to have and the record. So the more transparent we are, and the better we are about keeping the records of what we found out and what it might mean for people, the easier the decisions will be made down the line. So that when we go and we say, okay, so this is option A for transportation and what it would mean to get to this school as of this date. This is the best information we have. This is the best information we have for this. Okay, this offer will be good from this institution for this long. So, okay, well, this is as far as we got. I mean, we can only do what we can do. But we can't say we're not going to look into it just because we don't agree with what the outcome might be. I think we still have to figure out what could it be, right?
Are any other towns, do you have any other town information besides?
I think the biggest thing is people want choice, right? And they do. I think that's kind of the name of the game for most of the towns. I can't speak for SE 13, but I do think that people want to have choice.
There's a little bit of pushback on that, because who wants choice? Parents want choice.
Right.
Does that mean the townspeople and taxpayers want choice? Because there are two things, and one's a lot bigger than the other.
Well, I think what we have to do is figure out let's all get common terms. What does choice mean?
Yeah.
Does choice mean lower taxes and better options for quote-unquote the families? Does choice mean one higher amount of money each year? Like, can anyone here tell me that you know exactly what the person next to you means when you say the word choice? Because I don't think that any of us really know exactly what we all agree on the word for choice.
No.
So I think
That's why I've been asking from the start with this. I'd like to have an understanding of what our options actually are.
Yeah,
And we actually never moved in that direction, because I'm still struggling with the idea of what is choice. Is it something that we can even get? And we never wanted to explore that.
So what would the questions be that you would want answered?
For me, I've explained, that's why for me, like, I'm prepared to argue why we should send our kids to Conway. And exploring other things at this point in time for me, I think is going to be a waste of time. I think the sooner that the sending towns get together and start to educate the public about what the contract could look like with Conway versus what it could look like with other schools, the sooner we'll get to resolving this issue. Because to me, transportation is a big part of it. I don't see how you give parents a choice on where to send their children to school. And then still maintain the community, maintain a stable tax rate over the years, knowing where your kids are going to be. Who knows if Jack Frost is even going to be here 5 years from now? I don't know. I know that Conway will be. I know that Friary County will be. I know Moulton County will be. So when we say the idea like parents should be able to choose where they send their own kids, I don't like that idea. I'll argue strongly against that. If that's what we mean by choice. If choice is something different, where we can, every year, we can decide we're going to send them to Friary this year and Canada next year. I don't know. If that's the kind of choice that we're looking at. Is the community trying to save the most money that it can in the short term, or is it trying to save the most money that it can over the years? I don't know. Because if we send our kids to Firebury Academy, maybe it's cheaper per student, but when you factor in the fact that we need to buy another bus and hire another bus driver, I'm not sure that it is any less expensive anymore. Those are all huge studies and big issues. I understand that. They're not easy. I think if we really want to know if we have other options, we should start talking to the schools to see if they actually are options still.
Then I think we're on 100% the same page. I definitely think that that's a great idea, and I would love to get at least one or two people, whoever wants to do it, to give them the authority to speak on our behalf.
Absolutely.
To start to get that information and what that information will look like, so we can bring it back and let our townspeople start to pick it apart, let each other pick it apart and say, you didn't get all the information, we need more about this doesn't make sense, can you further define that? And in the end, there really only are a few scenarios that will work, but we do need to get common language, common understanding, and common numbers so that we can ultimately fight about what we think is the right way to go.
We also need to have a common timeline. Like, I think this sounds very obvious, but like framing this each time we talk about it, it's like, here are the deadlines, here are when things are actually going to happen, because I think that becomes murky, and I think that's also murky for a town. It's like, does this mean that this is go time next, there's this deadline in June, and then does this mean this is happening next September, so that people are seeing the process, and also kind of a FYI for town, so that it's like, here's what is happening, here's what we're doing, and here's when you get to have the choice to use that word in a different way, right? In the matter of what those steps are. So, yeah. So we're not going to form a committee, or are we going to form? I mean, I think, how do we get this done best?
I think we need a motion to have one person start to get the information, or two people, or whoever you guys want to do it,
Yeah.
so that someone is responsible to get the information and bring it back.
Are you willing to be part of that in tandem with someone else? Like, you have so much experience having been on the committee, and I'm just asking genuinely, is that something that you would take on?
Yes, I will work, yeah, I'm happy to work on that in tandem. I mean, it would have to be a thing where it is a collaborative effort in terms of people working to participate while the information's gathered.
Absolutely.
Not at the end to say,
Yes.
you never investigated that. So, but yes, I'm happy to do that.
So can we, as a board, ask Jen to do that, ask Jess to do it without having a committee, and then she can work with whomever wants to support her?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think we need a committee. I think
Yeah, no, that's what I was being clear about.
Okay.
No, I was being clear about that. So what we're doing as a board is saying, yes, Jess, can you please put that together? And then she can have
Yeah, I
support.
don't think we need a motion for it.
Yeah.
So if you're willing
Okay.
to take that on, it'd be fantastic.
That'd be amazing.
I'm
What
just thinking,
schools-
I don't know if anyone
I
wants
think what
to-
we need to do is determine what schools we want you to go to and reach
Yeah,
out.
and that's the type of thing where
I think
if
we have to
give you
keep
some
it-
direction, I'm
yeah.
happy to get information.
So one will be Freiburg.
Definitely.
Okay.
There still is a lot of interest in the north.
Gorham.
It sounds like we're playing Game of Thrones.
Every time I go over there.
So, I mean,
It's always raining, snowing.
I do think as a board, we have the option of, we can limit it. We don't have to give
I
every
think we
option.
should start, I think instead of making this giant,
Yeah.
can we start with that and then get our muscle developed on what the information is, and then we can also decide if we're gonna, because then we have a template. So I'd rather, instead of also overwhelming Jessica with go to all 5, we might really not need to do that. So let's start and get good at this, and then and then have a sample, here's what it looks like, here's what we know, and then you're not wasting time grabbing information that's actually irrelevant, or that we can, as a board, which I'm so excited for having this conversation right now.
So it's a good start. People on it.
Yeah.
And it also gives the community opportunity to say, hey, come back to this next meeting and say, we also want you to do
Yeah.
this place and this place, and then we determine if we do that at that point.
Okay.
And then if we're meeting with Bartlett, you can always ask there.
Okay.
If you're joint board meeting or meeting with them, we could send that question ahead.
Yeah.
As to what we want them to bring to the meeting.
And I'll just reiterate again, we don't have a lot of time for this, but the town does. We've
Right.
got basically 3 years to figure this out,
Because it would go into effect in fall of what,
2028.
2028, that's when a change is made. So I want on the top of every document to say that. I would love that.
Okay.
sitting on my hands.
I have a suggestion or an observation and then a couple of comments.
Well,
It sounds-
we're not at public comments right now.
But it's on the
This is a board.
agenda. This is a question on the agenda, which had previously been stated that that was an area we were inviting commentary from the community.
Not quite there yet, I guess. I'm gonna make sure we're finished with this conversation, trying to stick to the, I didn't let Kate speak, so it's not fair to just let you jump in.
Are we allowed to ask questions on the subject we're changing, like the rules we set out?
Not based on my SBA conversation. No, we're supposed to just move on, so we'll wait till we get to, citizen comments. That's my new training. Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee?
We have no updates,
Need to schedule.
but we need to schedule a meeting and also get Aaron involved, which is great.
Safety Committee,
Nothing new to report.
Whitney Center?
Yes, the Whitney Center. So we have 2 items for the Whitney Center this evening. The first I'll introduce, Tish Hammond is the Whitney Center chairperson for that committee that I sit on as a member of the school board. And after our last school board meeting, I was commissioned to do some questioning with the board of the Whitney Center. So this first part came out of that discussion that evening, and then I'll show the second part. Thanks, Tish, for coming this evening. And
you're welcome. I'm going to read this that I passed out. And basically, this is the result. I'm on the Whitney Oversight Committee, and this is the result of having new blood come in and really see what's going on and how it could be improved. And the new blood would be primarily Greg Marcello, who's here with us. And I think he's doing a great job. And I think everyone in town and around this area knows what a good job you're doing, Greg. And also Bridget Herlihy, who is our program coordinator as well and does all our admin and marketing stuff along with Greg. But what happens too when you bring in new blood is they see things and they think of improvements and stuff that we haven't kind of addressed in the past. But a lot of you have sat on the oversight committee. I know Jerry has, Darlene is right now, Jess has in the past. So this is a restructuring of the fees that the school charges the Whitney Center. Basically, when we have activities at the Whitney Center, we actually pay the school to use the building. And Greg is saying, why are we doing that? So I'm going to read this proposal to you and ask the school board for their comments on it. The Whitney Oversight Committee proposes the following memo of understanding regarding the Whitney Community Center facility fee structure between the Jackson Grammar School and the Friends of the Whitney Community Center. The Friends of the Whitney Community Center utilize the Whitney Center for classes, presentations, and events. The Friends is a subcommittee of the Whitney Oversight Committee and is tasked with the mission of offering a diverse array of programming for a greater Jackson community, including outreach to the elderly as well as the children and family-focused activities. The Friends of the Whitney collaborates with the Grammar School as the primary Whitney Community Center space user. The space is also available to be used by private and public businesses, organizations, individuals for a facility fee. A request for use form is submitted to the Grammar School and corresponding facility fees are charged. The Whitney Oversight Committee has the option to subsidize the facility fees for local nonprofit organizations. Given that the Friends is operating on a limited budget and is making considerable strides in promoting community connection, wellness, and education, it is herein agreed that there will be no facility fee charged by Jackson Grammar School to the Friends. However, if the Friends are unable to provide a key holder host or the program requires more than the basic Whitney Community Center services beyond the normal setup, janitorial service, and utilities, it's understood that a facility fee will be charged for those extra services. To streamline the paperwork, the Friends will submit a quarterly request for use as opposed to every time we send something to Susan to fill in paperwork for every program, that we'll do a request for use spreadsheet quarterly to the JGS administrator, thereby coordinating the Friends programs with JGS use. The programs can then be added to the Whitney calendar. So basically, and we're not talking about that much money. We're talking about, we've looked over the years and we're talking about somewhere between $750 and $1,500 or something like that. But at the same time, the Friends have also, when the school board has come forward, or Gail in the past has come forward, we have to buy a tent. Would you guys help? We put in $1,500. We improved the walkway so it would be more handicapped accessible. We paid $2,900 for the walkway. So we're here to help with those things. We just want to eliminate this, the way the fee structure is. It just seems nominal and it's paperwork for these guys to handle. So
It would save time and everything.
save time. Thank you.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, I
All
appreciate
the work
that.
you've done over the years
Oh.
for this building and for the school and all this. I mean, it's like, without you, this, we wouldn't have programming here. We wouldn't have this established here, so.
Well, now we're okay.
I don't
Okay.
know.
She threw the baton.
I'm trying. These are great.
Do we need to make a motion?
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've thought about the mechanics of how the money works with all of this. And I might be off base here, but at one point in time was the school using this, so the money generated from the Whitney Foundation comes to the school every year. And then we have to disperse it out in 3 different ways, basically.
Mhm.
Kind of how we've chosen, but we do it by the way the contract states. Were we at one point giving some of that money to the Friends of the Whitney?
Yes.
Okay, and I think that's why we were charging for it, because it was a way to move the money around. And we're not doing that anymore. That makes total sense. And like, what I don't want to do is like, this makes sense to me. It's simpler and simpler. That's great. But can we do this is my main concern.
Oh, I believe we can, but what we did, Jerry, is that we get so much from the charitable trust every year that comes to the school. And we actually get 50% of what comes to the trust.
Yeah.
But what we didn't have back then, and everybody was in agreement for that, but what we didn't have back then are, we pay someone to help run the programming now, this Bridget to do the marketing and whatever. And so it's costing us, and we're still available to, when we get certain requests, to help with those things.
So this
I
will
think,
free up money so that you can spend it on useful things as opposed to
yes,
shuffling paperwork
Right.
around.
exactly.
Yep.
And also, we are very willing to help with kids programming too. I think Greg has done great with that. And we already spoke with Erin about doing a program with the school as well.
And that's fantastic, but
Yeah.
that money was also supposed to go to other things other than kids too, so I mean, it's.
Right,
it's
exactly.
cool. So yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt this memorandum of understanding.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, that was awesome. Thank you.
So at our last school board meeting, we were discussing the fact that the acoustics in this room can be challenging. And we also, we're having difficulty getting Wi-Fi and making sure that we're able to connect. And we've tried to have some Zoom meetings here. Somebody's been on Zoom and they're unable to make a school board meeting. It's been difficult to have them be able to hear and see. I know Pam Stimson sat in the front and held up her laptop, and still the person participating missed part of it. So I was commissioned to go speak to the Whitney Oversight Committee about what could be done to upgrade that, and lo and behold, 3 days later, when I went to the meeting, that was on their agenda as well. So I'm going to introduce to you Greg Marcello, who's been doing a lot of the programming, lots of great stuff, and he has some audio-visual information to share.
Yeah, so we're going to make a proposal on audio-visual with that as it relates to the Whitney Center. And basically, the Whitney Center is managed by the Jackson Grammar School. And the Friends of the Whitney Community Center is one of the groups that uses the school. But uses the building, but the school is probably the primary user of the building right now. But there are other users too, and it's pretty clear that from an audio-visual point of view, it's probably time for an upgrade. I would maybe argue for an overhaul if we could do that, but it's time to sort of take it to the next level because it is hard to hear certain things. We've got microphones and you pick them up, they bang, and we have a projector that's, seen some better days. We don't have a screen, things like that. So there's things that we can do to upgrade the building, and it's not just for the school, it's not just for the Friends, it's for all the groups that utilize this space. We basically did sort of initial research about if we were to upgrade, what would the cost be? And probably to do everything that we might be interested in doing, it was somewhere between $30,000 and $35,000. But we have initial needs that we think are more important, so we're not talking about the whole overhaul, and that could take place over multiple years. But right now, there's 3 things that we're concerned about. 1 is microphones, 2 is stage lighting, and then 3 is projection. And if we could handle those 3 things, then we feel like that would be a major step forward with regards to the audiovisual here right now. So, as we heard earlier, there is money in a Whitney fund. This is separate from the money that we were just talking about. This is money that is part of those dollars that get split up, that over the years has been accumulated, and is approximately $50,000 right now. So our recommendation is, and the town has already said that they would contribute $2,500. The Oversight Committee has said they would contribute $2,500. So we're asking for another $10,000 from the $50,000, which would give us $15,000 to do those 3 things that we're talking about right now. The exact pieces we're going to buy, et cetera, that's going to require a next step of gathering the key players to say, okay, here's what we researched, but maybe there's a better solution, having Hank involved and others at that point to decide exactly what we want with the $15,000. But that $15,000 should give us those 3 things that we're trying to do.
So, can you explain how we will notice the difference, right? In a school board meeting,
So,
what exactly?
so I'll have microphones in front of you because I can't hear what half of you are saying right now.
Got it. And then those microphones will also, will there be town or like citizen microphones so that if you are zooming in, that we could hear those
And
people
we could
better?
use that, yeah, we could use one of the microphones for that too.
Okay, great. And then also, so like if someone is coming in remote, that that experience will be upgraded inside of this initial plan? Maybe.
That wasn't part of it, but I think that's a piece we need to talk about. And if that's what's critical, I don't think that's a big expense to do.
Yeah.
So I think we can look at how we can do that.
I think that, we've all indicated that, we want to be able to support that so that we can have, and we have board members who are, traveling, we're trying to be here as much as possible. When we can't be, a lot of us actually can still be a part of a board meeting. It's, having been on the other side, it's a heinous experience. Right. So, like, anything that we can do, I think within that, I would really love to have that be, obviously the Whitney Center is used for a number of different reasons, but, say, hey, what is the user experience going to be like for town members to experience, board members, and also for the board member to be able to participate. So that
would be, because it's not just for you too.
Yeah.
There's other groups that have the
absolutely
same
to be able to zoom
scenario.
in. Yeah, like even if it's a principal search committee, or well, there's not going to be one of those for a while. Let's use a different. sorry, I actually saw. I saw the principal search committee on the committees, and I was like, why do we have that anymore? We have a great new principal. Okay, if there are other committees, like other opportunities, mea culpa, like we'll take 2 months.
We should support those.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. That answers my question.
I'd like to add just something and say that part of this came from Lauren Weeder, because she came with a wish list to our group and said, I would love this. This really needs to happen here. When I do these programs and the kids are using mics or we have things going on, and we all know what town meeting is like.
Yeah.
You can't hear anything and speak up, and I don't know how to use the mic. We're talking about headsets. I think ideally what Greg and I have talked about is that if we get the money, we're going to sit down, and this is a phase, so maybe there's 3 phases or maybe 2, maybe next year we finish it, that it would be someone maybe from the school board. I would like Hank involved, because I'd love this to tie in, like you're saying, that you can actually be somewhere else and be in this meeting and hear everything really clearly. And Lauren would be on it, and Barbara Campbell, she's the one who went to the town, and immediately they said, we'll give $2,500 toward it, because they want the mics to work for the town meeting. So. But I think that's how, if we get the money, we're going to sit in a small group and say, this is where we're going to put the money.
Perfect. That's great. Can we get a motion?
I don't see a camera. That's the only piece that.
A camera.
A camera.
Yeah.
For the audience.
Like a moving camera.
If you stream it, I suppose you could do that, but I think you also need to have a good camera.
Yeah.
So we want to up the money, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Go for it.
That works.
Yeah, you got it.
That works if you think we should get more and really go for it. put the money in. We have the money. I'm the one probably who's been more conservative. Greg's like, let's go do the 35 ask. And I said, for me, who's been babying this building for so long, it's hard to say, let's take this money for that, because I see other things that will need to be done. So it's just figuring the right amount to take.
And I think that's the best approach to it, really, because I'm like Greg, I think I'd go for the whole thing right now myself too. But because to me, that money's been sitting there kind of untouched for so long. And when the buildings needed things like siding, some of that's covered by warranty. We're gonna need a new roof sometime, probably in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe. But the money that's going into there, it should be used. It shouldn't just sit there indefinitely. And when the building needs a new roof, when it needs to be painted, when we need to replace the floor in here, you know, I know it's the town ultimately, but the school uses this building the most, so that can come out of the school maintenance budget. I don't mean our capital reserve fund for it, but if we need to replace the floor some year, the school should appropriate money to do it, and maybe not touch that money, because that money could be used for really improving this building. And I think it's a great first step to use that, you know, for us to appropriate draw $10,000 out tonight for that. That's what you're asking for, right?
Can't do it tonight.
They can't.
Right, but we need to have a public hearing. We need to, at our next meeting, to do it. And also needs to be approved by the trustees of the trust fund as well. But we can make the motion tonight to ask them for the money, I think, right? Or we need to have a public hearing first.
We'll have a public hearing, so
Okay.
that would be the thing. It would be, tonight it would be,
Let's put it on the agenda.
we agree
Yes.
that we're going to authorize the expenditure of up to 10,
Or you could say
15,
4 if
20.
you want.
I think it's a camera, so
He
let's
needs
do
a camera,
let's do
so
15.
15 cents.
Let's say 15.
Something.
Please do 15, and you can always give it back.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why not go for the higher amount up to, only because it might make sense to do the whole thing well now, but obviously we're trusting you, so don't go crazy, okay?
No.
There also might be cost savings to
Yeah,
do
just should
it.
be watching
cost
that.
savings, you know, but
Should be watching.
because
So I'm
part of
okay
it
with
is,
15.
one, just watching the increase in the quality of the programming. There's a lot of interest in what's happening, and I think that it would be just an added benefit. And we were always talking about equity. I mean, it's equity for every age, right? So there are a lot of people who I think would like to participate in programming that might not have access. So I think it also will increase access in a way that has been a goal for the Whitney and for our community. So
I mean, hearing impaired, Susan just mentioned that, like for, you know, concerns that she knows people who got that. And that's on that next.
That's part of the whole
that's part of the
package,
next
hearing
package.
impaired is part of that.
Most of us live in this town still can't hear very well anymore. So.
Yeah. What is the average age of the town? 58, I think.
So we're in favor of 15, I'm good with 15.
So somebody should make a motion.
yeah, just a question, do you think 15 is sufficient or would it be 20?
Right.
Well, I mean, if I were coming with the whole thing, it would be 30. And if we didn't spend it all, we wouldn't spend it all.
But I'm
But
not,
right
the
now-
five's been allocated already, the 5 was.
Right, but the 15 will get us all the things we talked about, plus to ensure the camera on that piece, I'm pretty sure. I mean, we would cover that. What we wouldn't be adding is the hearing impaired. We wouldn't be adding speakers here that are better than they are now, and a mixer. We can still use what's here. Those are the things we can keep using. So those are less of a concern than the other things. So if we want to do it in 2 phases, part of it this year and part of it next year, we can do that.
Isn't that 20? The 5 they have and the 15 we would give them?
Yes.
The 5 you have and the 15.
Right, that'd be 20,
So
right.
we-
Oh, yes, yeah, that was 20, and that's, you know.
I know.
I think what we wouldn't be getting are the speakers and the mixer probably, we would do everything else, but again, the speakers and the mixer. But we've got those right now, so.
And to be fair to the process, I would like the opportunity for the facility committee to take a look at the funds that we have in this building and the capital maintenance trust fund for the school, and have a conversation with Aaron and our building maintenance person, John Stokey, before we kind of commit to the next phase with money from that fund in particular. Just to be fair to the process.
All right, so all those in favor of,
Is there a motion for 15?
We have to put it on the agenda for next time.
So I make a motion to put $1,000, what is it called? From the Whitney Capital Fund on the agenda for next,
To have a public hearing.
yeah, to have a public hearing next month. And in the
Second.
interim, the facility committee will look at it.
and all those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, that was awesome,
Great,
very
thank
nice,
you.
thank you.
That's That's the end of my committee report.
Nice job.
I'm sure there's another one.
No strategic plan.
No strategic plans.
Kevin's and Aaron, when, I love having this section about the strategic plan. Kevin, have you and Aaron met about kind of like quarterly reporting out to the board on the strategic plan?
Yeah, I'm taking appointments, I feel like my car dealership, yeah, we can get
Okay.
together.
That's great, so maybe at the next meeting, we could have the cadence of what we're looking at for the year that works with you all, because really it's about you saying, this is what works, that we're doing that quarterly, versus Jerry and I coming up with a plan.
Committee assignments?
Well, we don't need a principal search committee, this is what we've marked, so we can get rid of that.
Getting rid of that.
Yes, okay.
So I think we have a new list here in the back of the book. I don't think principal search committee, we can exchange that one or change it for the superintendent.
I can't just get exchanged.
And in addition to that, the assistant. Two pages there. Because there's also, should be on here, the Conway Budget Committee, we should have somebody sit on that. And then there's also the Wellness Committee, which I don't see on the updated list, and the SAU 9 Curriculum Committee.
I was on that, but we met only once since I've been on the board.
Were we consolidating the wellness committee
Yeah.
to like the whole SAU 9 as
It
opposed
says
to?
SAU 9
And
and
have
Jackson.
somebody from our, maybe sit on it. And so those are the ones that I knew that weren't on here traditionally. So budget, we have Jerry's on here. Who else would like to be on the budget committee?
Only budget.
Okay. Policy, can stay on, would anybody like to join in as well?
That one meets what, 5 times a day?
Yes,
No, I can't.
at least once a minute, at least once a month,
How often does it meet?
at least once a month, or every other month, yeah.
We're starting to catch up, maybe.
Okay,
A little bit, sort of.
I'm interested in, I'm maxed until like November, but,
Yeah, we probably won't be meeting until November.
okay.
okay. All right, joint boards, Jerry, Darlene, and myself. And we need some people to go to the meeting this Thursday.
Oh, you're on.
Thank you. All right. Manifest, I'm fine. Darlene, you okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Bus committee, rarely meets.
Keith can still be on that.
I was on the bus committee before Keith. All I
Can you
know
get
is they're
open?
yellow. And they have no seatbelts.
All right. Keith,
Yeah, I know, I guess.
They're not required on buses.
I'm not designed for sequels either.
we can leave it blank for now,
There you go.
as a need basis. Curriculum review, if Jerry and Darlene are on it.
Yeah.
All right. There's nobody on the special education review. Joint loss management committee, safety, Darlene. The New Hampshire SBA delegate as needed, that's fine. The Kennett High School handbook review, I'm fine with that. SAU 9 executive, that's me. Facilities, Jerry, and so far it's just you.
Take
That's
some.
Jess. Is Jesse doing that?
Just said yes.
Career Tech Advisory, fine. Bartlett Curriculum Committee, Jerry, that's you and I. Good.
Yeah, I don't know that
We've
any
never really
curriculum
met.
meetings ever met since 2002, so,
Mhm.
nor should they, I think.
The Bartlett Policy Committee, I'm fine with staying on that. Personnel, Micah, are you still good?
Yep, we can do that.
Okay. Library,
Yes,
all right. Whitney,
yes.
Diversity, Equity.
Yes, but there's no SAU 9 social justice committee, so we can strike it. I don't think that exists anymore, so.
Okay, striking that. Tuition Review Committee. I don't know why Sasha is on there,
It's probably,
crossing that off. Jessica, you're still on here.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's old, that's from when you were before. SAU 9 Jackson Health and Wellness, so we've combined that to the Wellness Committee. Anybody ready?
You can see Emily's.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, so there's no high school options committee anymore.
Right.
So we'll get rid of
No.
that.
That's gone.
And the principal search committee.
Search committee, superintendent, that's me. And the high school tuition study committee.
Darlene,
That's-
you shouldn't, yeah, that I
No,
think, so.
Jerry, who else do you want on, Jerry?
We'd like her yes to do that, right? I don't know, but you should kind of.
What is it? The Kennett High School Tuition Study Committee?
I think that was
That's the contract.
once upon a time. Remember, we had all those meetings?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So that, you can
We can
remove
probably
that.
Let's strike that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or do you want to do the, move it into, morph it into the high school Kennett contract?
Yeah,
Well, but
Because Jerry's on that.
well, do we need a committee for that? Oh, yeah.
It's not a committee, they're all committees, but it's already been, they've been meeting, talking.
Got it.
It's not a subcommittee of our board.
I
No.
got it.
So who else would like to be on it besides Jerry? Darlene is filled in, Darlene is filled in.
I thought we're not counting it anymore.
This is that
This is not the same.
big contract, this, the one that Tom's running that one?
Tom, yeah.
Yeah.
Tim.
Is it still me?
Tim, sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Darlene, you're still on it. Do you want to still do it? Yeah, Darlene, do it.
we're morphing it into
Everyone-
the Tim
will they-
contract.
So is there still a tuition review committee?
This is the
So we gotta
tuition study
retitle
committee.
that?
But is that still active?
This is for us, for the grammar school,
Oh,
for
gotcha.
our own
Okay.
tuition.
So we're retitling it?
No, so the last one, yes, we're gonna
Just
read.
strike the last one.
Yeah.
Well, you're on, well, I want people to know that you are on and have been on, as well as Darlene, have been going to the Kennett High School Conway contract meetings, and they're still ongoing, so you should be on it.
Yeah, so,
So I'm just changing the name, that's all. All right, and then we have, I think that's all of them.
the only thing that's a little confusing about that is it's not a subcommittee of our board.
It's not a subcommittee, no, just like none of these other ones are subcommittees. The policy committee is not a committee, subcommittee to us. It's not a subcommittee.
What I will try to do, and I've done this with the other boards too, I'll try and put a document together that explains the scope and the purpose of this, and the membership, when it meets, how often it meets, that type of thing there. 'Cause
In your
it's-
spare time.
Yeah.
I got that, I got time around 10 tonight to do that.
Glad we're keeping the can on that anymore. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Consider approval of Jackson Public Library and Jackson Grammar School circulation collaboration.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Alright. We have the board goal setting. You want to nail down a time for that? Days or evenings? I'm good for either. Erin?
Depends on the day, but I supposedly I'm retired, so I'm supposed to be free day and night.
When are you looking, what?
Yeah, what are we doing?
This working people are wearing it.
Let's see, so today's the 19th. Next week?
Holy goals. I can't until after October. I can't until October.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see both.
There you go. All
And evenings would be better.
right, October and evening. None of that's here. All right. You want to do the first week of October? There's the fair. I know, it's big.
Yeah, I would be out on that first week. I've got to be here.
Okay.
What are we talking about? How, like, we're talking about an
I was
hour-long
thinking like
meeting?
2 hours.
A 2-hour meeting?
It could be less, but I would like to block 2 hours. So we
Can you
leave
do an afternoon meeting, like 4 to 6 or something?
I can work hard at that, yeah.
On your working days, fix them,
Yeah, sure, how about the,
it's a holiday too,
The 9th? Can I do the 9th?
No, that's a holiday.
No.
I'm gonna be at the
Why is
registry.
it so empty? Forget it.
oh, I do the 12th, if we could do 4:30 to 6:30.
I won't be there.
We have an SAU board meeting at 6 that night.
superintendent search tentatively scheduled for 4
Former experience. Okay, we could do the 11th from 4:30 to 6:30.
What day of the week?
Wednesday.
Pam, can you do the 11th? I have negotiations.
11, 4 to 6? Erin, does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay,
I probably won't be able to make it till 5.
5 to 7. See?
5 to 7.
Make it happen.
That's so good for you, Erin?
Yeah, that's fine.
Pam?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
What was 5 to 7?
Yes. Here. Great. All right, response to citizen letter.
Can I just jump in for 1 second?
Yep.
So, I just wanted to note, we have a conflict of interest policy in Jackson that states that a board member who has a personal or private interest in a matter proposed or pending before the board will disclose such interest to the board and will not deliberate on the matter, will not vote on the matter, and will not attempt to influence other members of the board regarding the matter. And so I think because I was part of a letter that went out in June that seems to be part of a bigger conversation relating to this letter, I think I need to recuse myself. So our policy actually says that I need to refrain from just even the appearance of looking like I'm influencing anything. So because of that, I just wanted to state it publicly that I hope you don't think that I'm not interested or care about what's happening, but I'm going to step aside because I didn't want anyone to think like if I wink or something that I'm making any use. So it's just my contact. So to that end, I'm just going to step aside.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, guys.
How would you like to respond?
Are we talking about both letters, or are we talking about?
Let's talk about one at a time.
What are we?
The first one, we'll talk about the earlier one, and then we'll talk about the other one. So we should do that. And how will we respond?
Well, just like last meeting, I have no response to me, so nothing for me.
I don't think you can ignore somebody's letter by not responding at all.
So how would you like to respond to that one?
I don't have the letter in front of me. I think you have to acknowledge that somebody had concerns and that you have to state that or receipt of that. And we understand they had concerns. And appreciate their bringing their concerns to us. I just don't think you can ignore ignore somebody's speaking to you or sending a letter. I don't think you can just ignore that.
Mike?
I think that, I agree with Darlene, I also think that it's a letter that's about board conduct, and that brought up some big questions about, how we as a board are conducting our business, and I think to have a non-response to that.
I'm not saying not respond, I'm asking you what you want your response to be.
Well, I guess I was just building on Jerry's. I think that we, these things are all tied together, like we've done, we brought in the School Board Association to do a training. I think there are some places where that could have been upgraded per the second letter of how that was done. I think that we have, my guess is that, or not my guess, stepping back a couple paces from this to say writ large, how we operate in Jackson as a school board is different than, I think, the level of rigor that can be used in how a school board interacts with public. And I think that we've been going through some growing pains around that. And I think that the more we can be human and like actual people inside this discussion, the more we'll be able to continue to have the trust in our community members. So I think we can have a response about areas that we want to be in growth. I think that all of the things that were brought up in that, maybe not all of them, let me recast that, not all the things that were brought up in that letter are places where we have specific spots for growth, but many of them are. And I think that to be candid about that and say, here's where we are working to upgrade our processes would be a great way to respond. And I think it should be a board discussion in response to a letter like that, because it was really about, like, this board is in,
Right, so that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
So what would you like to?
So, just for community transparency's sake, you're talking about a letter, and
Right.
yet
Right.
I really graciously read her letter so the community could hear it. I know Jerry, I believe at the last meeting, said that if community members write letters, they should be read to the community so that they are part of the record. Could I request of the board that this other letter from June be presented to the community
I believe
so that we are having a transparent conversation about what we're talking
So,
about?
at any rate, we've been going through this for month after month after month, and I think we need to move on. We're being bogged down for no reason at all. We need to move on and conduct our business, and that's my feelings on it.
So no ownership of.
So the first, I mean, we could talk about the findings from the meeting. I'm fine with that. Like,
Sure.
we can just, if it'll make everybody happy. So the RSA 91, based on the information that I have, came back that there was nothing negligent happened. I did not meet with anybody clandestinely, because there was no subcommittee at the time, nor were those people that I met with at the subcommittee even part of the subcommittee before it even became a non-committee. So there was no RSA violations based on what Barbara Lohman said and based on the letter that I wrote. So that was the first letter that it addressed. So that, I have nothing to say back other than
Who's Barbara Lohman?
she's the town lawyer
So this is,
that we wanted to meet with for several reasons, but that was one of
So
them.
we've had 2 opportunities to have training from the New Hampshire School Board Association. Both of those meetings reinforce the idea that we've been conducting ourselves the way we're supposed to be conducting ourselves. And then that was reinforced again by our meeting with the attorney. And that's why, to me, we just need to move on and keep doing our business. I think some clarification maybe about how we post our meetings, where, when might be helpful. And we post our meetings in 2 places, one on the building here, or 2 places here, this building and the school building, and then on the SAU9 website. Navigating it to it on the SAU9 website isn't necessarily the easiest thing if you've never done it before, but it is very accurate, and it's very accessible. And that's where we post our meetings, and that's where people should go and look for them. If our agendas end up on e-news, if we have things end up on e-news, that's fantastic, but that's not us, that's not our policy, that's somebody else doing that, facilitating that, and that's fantastic, but that's not what we do. I think for simplification purposes and ease of use, if people are wondering what our agenda is, and they want to see when we're posting for our meetings, look on our buildings or look on the SAU9 website. When you go to the SAU9 website, you would go to school districts, you would hit Jackson School District, and then you have to navigate down to the bottom of that page and you'll see a place for agendas. You tap on that, it brings you to the agendas going back, I think, to 2012 or so, and they're all there.
But why can't we take, just on that point, why can't we take another step with the great communication system that we have in our school and say, let's do everything we can to involve the public, and when we have an agenda, give it to our school office to then share it with e-news, to then share it with our community.
Because when we've done that in the past,
Yeah.
it's caused confusion in the community.
We don't
this
have
is-
control of e-news, and if Leslie goes on vacation,
Yeah.
it doesn't go
Okay.
out.
But we do have, like,
So we're trying to make it, at least, if it gets to e-news, that's great, but we can't count on it going to e-news.
So if someone's
Because
looking
we
for
don't
a
have
meeting
control
profile
over
that
that.
isn't, they're going to feel disenfranchised from the process. In other words, if of what we're sitting, it's always here and it's always there. That's what
and
we're
we will
looking
make every effort to communicate it in advance out. I mean, I feel like there's a step that can be made that does not have to be so
Oh, it'll still go
binary.
out in like the newsletter for the school, it'll still try to go out, but it will not be our responsibility to make sure it goes out as the school board. Because if Susan was on vacation and that's what happened,
Yeah.
something didn't go out, right? Because she was away, and she should have been away, you know, or Leslie goes away. So we can't always count on those vehicles, so what we can count on bless you, for sure, are these two things. So, and that's in our control.
Yeah, I
And
think,
that's how it has always been in the past.
okay, but I think, so my sense is that, again, in the interest of, I'm with you, Jerry, that yes, we need to move on, and also I think there are spaces where we can do that generously with our community, and sort of say, these are the places where it is guaranteed, and we will make every effort to, you know, to keep supporting the school, to have, because we want to have more people know what's happening, so that those things, like, that's how I would like to frame it, and that's how I would frame it from our from my standpoint.
And we can have community people come to us and say, just put it in those two places, and if people get trained to know that that's where it's gonna be.
Yeah, but that's really hard.
And I know,
Like,
we will continue, but we can't guarantee, you know, if something happens, that it's gonna be in e-news. And I don't feel comfortable with that. And,
I understand, and I understand that you can't guarantee what Les is gonna put in the news. I think that we can, I think that just to say, we're only gonna put in these two places, and whatever happens after that is not our responsibility, does not feel like a way to bridge interactions. What I'm looking for is a way to bridge interactions versus a way to, like, be.
And I agree with you, but I'm looking to make sure that what we put out, we can be accountable for. And that's what we're being asked to do, is be accountable. So that's, we have control over those two spaces, those belong to the administration, and that's where the information will always be. And we can always send out e-news and obviously do whatever we can, and we will help direct people and guide people that this is where the information is going to be, that we have control over, and that's what we're being asked.
And were those places, did they have our SBA information on them?
I don't think. The SBA meeting that we had.
Was the SBA meeting
Yeah,
shared?
they're posted, absolutely. So,
Uh-huh.
it was posted on the SE9 website,
Mhm.
and it was sent to this location. I don't know if it was posted on this door or which door, but absolutely.
So we have control over those,
Mhm.
and that's what we're being asked to do. So that's what I can hang my hat on, is that we will have the meetings posted there. So it's an education of how to make sure we get people to know where the information is. And I agree, we'll put it in, you know, all the other things that we've been doing as well. But at the end of the day, definitely.
Can we take one more step and ask for the administration, who is part of making the agendas, to make sure that the school office is alerted beforehand? I mean, whether or not the school can get and publish that, I'm there, it feels like so stringent to me in this way. So Kevin, you look like you have an answer to that.
Well, no, I'm just looking at my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And this week, there are, 8 different meetings that have to get posted in agendas. And we send those out. Now, when they come to the office and who they go to from here, so I'm just saying, I think it would be problematic and unrealistic to expect our office to.
So who do they go to here?
They go to the main office,
Yeah,
Aaron
to
and
Susan.
Susan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
I
if
do
Susan's
them
on
Thursday
vacation.
afternoon or Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
I print them out, I walk over and post them,
Yeah.
post them on the front porch, do my best to get them to e-news. The link to the SAU website, school district thing that Jerry was discussing, is on our website under school board. It's on the town website under school board. So people just really have to kind of click on that. And it takes them to the SAU site. So that, again, if I'm on vacation, you can still go to the Jackson Grammar School website, it's still the same link. You can go to the town website, it's still the same link, it'll get you to the SAU. So the only piece that, I don't know if you're asking me to print it out and.
Oh, no, that's helpful to know. I just want to know what the process was.
That's the process.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah. Yeah.
So as far as the first letter, and one of the responses, the question asked was, we strongly recommend that all school board members undergo comprehensive training on the provisions of RSA 91A. So we've done 2. We just met with the lawyer last week, and that was a closed group, and then we did the Zoom with the New Hampshire School Board Association. Is there more to come? Yes, I'm sure. As we go along, we're certainly more attuned. I think mistakes do happen along the way, and I think we need do like everyone, that you have a mistake at home, you apologize, and hopefully you learn from it. And I can certainly learn from reading more of these RSAs. I never will push reply all. I've taken that button off that computer now, so. You know, as soon as you start communicating with a whole group, it becomes an issue, so. Things that you learn along the way.
I've definitely been much less communicative
Yeah.
based on
So that was,
the ruling.
so I was definitely, that's one of the items that.
Right, so more discussion on the response?
Yeah, so at this point, Jerry, you're saying you don't want, or you had said you didn't want to have a response. How do we want to move forward now? does this become the response? Yeah,
Pretty much, yeah.
yeah. Versus the letter, yeah.
We can do a letter, I mean.
No, I just was
it's-
clarifying what the next steps were. I
I'm
think,
only one person here, I mean, this.
absolutely.
Reports.
I mean, my sense is that, per what Darlene said, to be in a culture of improvement and also acknowledging that is really important for our school board. And I think especially, again, because we're a small town and the way that we've been really resting on a banter back and forth with citizens, and now we're trying to say, hey, we want to make sure that we're doing this appropriately, and there will be missteps. And I think that as we have missteps, being honest about those and coming forward with them is really important. So that's certainly a culture that I want to create and be a part of.
I mean, we both learned, or all of us learned, and Jerry probably already knows, but the SBA, they were clear on, it's pretty much a volunteer position. Rules change and things go on, and, there's no hidden agenda going forward. No one's getting a kickback here.
You get paid though, it's not volunteer, you get paid. If you break down my meetings and whatever, it's real money.
Stipends.
No, it's real money. It's real money.
It's real money, but when you add it up for an hour, I actually
All day
pay
long,
back.
It's not getting paid.
It's real money from the
Yeah.
town, it's not a volunteer position.
I'd ask, we do a written response? A written response. Can't do that?
We can.
They asked for a written response. Not all 4 people are here.
Do you want to draft one?
Here's an interesting point of clarification. If Darlene were to draft a written response and then would share it with the school board, how would we talk about it? Unless we came back to talk about it in the next meeting.
We'd have to talk about it at the next meeting.
So, but you can do it other ways. I mean, you can make a motion to make a written response and then make suggestions for that written response, and Darlene can then draft that response, and then at the next meeting, we could approve it and then send it out. We could make a motion to draft a written response, give Darlene the information that we want her to have in it, and then trust that she does that right, and when she does, once the draft is done, she can submit it to the public, and then we can adopt it at our next meeting if we want to. Would be another way to do that. But again, to me, I think it's time to move on. I mean, and I think
I'm trying to.
Right. I think like what you were saying is kind of the crux of all this, which is that we have unusual school board meetings here. We always have. Ever since I've been on the school board meeting, we engage with the public a lot more than we should. But because we're a small community, it's always worked out really well. This past year, it didn't.
Yeah.
We ran into some bumps along the way. The mistake that we made was when we pulled public comments off the agenda. That technically wasn't a violation because we allowed public comments that entire meeting, so it wasn't a violation. It would be a violation if we didn't allow public comments, but we do, so it's not a violation. And we're not required to have agendas, so it doesn't matter what's on agenda and what's not on agenda. We don't have to have them, so that's not a right to know violation. If you haven't had the exact way the agenda is supposed to be, it doesn't matter because those aren't under the right to know law. The right to know law does not require an agenda. It requires meetings to be posted 10 days in advance, or 14 days in advance.
40
hours.
40
40 hours. But I think the biggest problem that we have is that because we've been under this pressure, we're kind of being forced into not engaging with the public anymore like we used to, because now we have to do things the way we're supposed to do them to really fully appreciate our roles and responsibilities, because we've been confused on that as a board, and the public's been confused about our actions on the board because what the public thinks our roles and responsibilities are, actually, some of those things aren't our roles and responsibilities, and that doesn't sit well in a small community. And that's really the biggest problem here. And we can hammer out the little issues that have happened as much as we want to. It's not going to solve that bigger problem, which is how do we at these meetings engage with the people that are here that want to be engaged with us? And we want to be engaged with them. But now, because we've kind of built up these walls between each other, it's just become really difficult and hard. We're trying to navigate our way through that. Are we going to get back to someday where we can just do what we always did, and when you guys want to talk, you just talk, and when we want to talk, you just talk? I don't know. It would be nice if we did. Right now, we can't, because we're being accused of things, and we're threatened with lawsuits and things like that. And so, all right, now we're going to have to behave exactly the way we're supposed to, so that this doesn't happen anymore. And I don't think any of us really wants that. So, and that's, to me, that's kind of why I want to move on from this. It's like, let's just not perseverate on these details about how we got here. I've learned a lot over the last 6 months about right-to-know laws, more than I wanted to. And I've known a lot about it all along. And it's not a bad thing, but we've been wasting a lot of time on things, and we should just be moving forward with what we need to do. And just, I kind of get that at all. I mean, might be off base here, you think, or?
I appreciate it.
I do think you're off base.
Okay. We can wait to public comments, I guess, if you want to respond to why. But as far as a written response is concerned, I'm not in favor of one. I'm not quite sure how we draft one. We could maybe have Kevin draft one for us, and then see if we approve that. Or Chip, I'm willing to, if Darlene wants to take a stab at one, and then maybe we can approve it at the next meeting, I'm not sure, or if you want to, I mean.
I don't.
I can work with that.
There we go.
Okay.
You've got one.
And do we want to, like,
She's gonna be changed.
you guys can figure that out, we'll see what it's like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're coming from a different perspective than I am, which is fine, which is good. So together, we're going to draft a great letter.
Do you have more discussion on this?
Oh, no, not me.
That sounds like we have to discuss.
That's it for me.
Okay.
We've clarified for posting agendas, we're good with that? Is that all right. Date for next meeting is October 16th.
We didn't do the citizens conference.
That's next.
That's next, I'm following the agenda.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
I know you gotta flip all around, it's a lot.
Bartlett Jackson Joint Board meeting is October 16th. If you hear, we're fall here. If you have any questions that you would like to present to the Bartlett, make sure you get them to myself or Kevin, so they can be prepared.
What I heard was Jessica was talking about.
Oh, should you come
We
back?
didn't get them.
Jessica. I can text her.
KHS commission contract is being generated. Negotiation.
Yes, we want to ask them where they are and what they're doing.
I will put that in there.
And then we have all the usual, at the beginning of the year, when, it's going.
Yeah. Joe Young will be here, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'll send her a text.
All right. Yeah, and if there's anything else, let me know.
Okay. Citizen comments. James.
You've all been very patient in waiting to hear my comments, and I want to thank you for that. And also, it gave me a chance as I was sitting there and listening to your conversation. First of all, thank you very much for a really good conversation about our letter. And so actually I want to ask a different question, which really is probably more directed to you, Kevin. But in the budget that was presented in the end of June, so closing out last school year, there was a payment of $18,462 to the outgoing principal that, Kevin, I think you presented to the board for approval. And it turns out that the board has a formula that defines outgoing payments. And I'm not able to do the arithmetic to figure out how that payment was justified. And so I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about how that $18,462 payment to the outgoing principal was calculated. I think the calculation according to the formula that you have in your HR policies that you ratified in 2022 suggests that that payment should have been a little more than half as much.
I don't have it off the top of my head. So there were two things that did occur. There was a time when Gail was a teaching principal, and then the board adopted policies that were principal policies. During that time, there were some benefits that carried over from her 7 years as a teaching principal to and that was agreed upon in personnel. I will try and dig up because I knew that was a question. Let me see if I can find it and I can give you the actual breakdown of exactly what that was.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody's looking. Thank you. Any other citizen comments?
I was listening to the conversation across the board about the options, I don't even know what to call it, high school choices. I think maybe backing up and figuring out the questions that need to be answered might be a better place to start than just running out and getting information. I just think it might serve the community and actually you as a board. Like, as I listened to that conversation, there were real concerns that were news to me, and I think even across the board, you all don't, and this is just a guess, that across the board, you have concerns and interests and actually questions that you really want answered. And so running out and getting information might not actually get you the answers that you need. I just encourage you to be super thoughtful on that. It's even a chance to engage the community. Like, what questions does the community have? I don't know, maybe I'm going off on an organizational development tangent, but I just encourage you to think about like, what information you really need. What are the concerns? Because I think there's great thinking and expertise on the board, but it's not coherent. And so, like, there's all this activity and a desire to get to a decision, but the criteria for a decision, the questions need to be answered aren't quite clear, in my opinion. And you guys are far ahead of me on this, I'm sure.
What is your name, please? Good.
I'm Charlie Morrow. Charlie Morrow, parent.
Several years ago, when I sat up there, like, I think maybe my very earliest days as a board member, so we're talking years, like 6 years ago, Kevin was talking about the urgency at which this board needed to tackle high school options. And here we are, like all these years later, with all of these question marks, and then people like Jerry, who have well intentions, I'm sure, but sitting up there with certainty, making recommendations about Kennett, and Jessica posing a host of questions that we don't know about. And I'm curious, so Kevin, how long ago did you prompt this board to start very aggressively looking into high school options?
We started actually with all of the boards, I would say it was pre-COVID, so it might have been 1920, just looking at gaining understanding of that contracts. And then it started to build some momentum pretty much last year at the beginning of the spring of the previous year.
Okay. And then we've had this kind of best practice Tamworth model that's been kind of spoken about in these meetings and communities as like an example of what to do, right? But here we are, like just spinning the wheel and then having board members say like, this is my decision. And how, as a community, are we supposed to have faith in a board that is formed on opinion?
So just because you're targeting,
Yeah.
I want to push back on a little bit. I didn't say I've made a decision. I say I'm prepared to make arguments why I think we should send our kids to Conway. It's a different thing, okay? It's going to take a very long time for us to go through these things. And when we first started talking about this, Kevin didn't say anything about any urgency. In fact, me had said we should jump on this sooner than later because the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be.
But what has been done outside of like the dismantling of the community's faith in this getting accomplished? other than talking around, like alienating community members that were really well-meaning and present and engaged in the conversation. All of that, none of that work is on the table anymore. Like, can we just, how about as a board, like, I'm so glad, thank you, Micah, thank you, Jess, thank you all, for, like, having a conversation in front of the community. This is where the work gets done, right? And so, can we please get some work done for the high school, please? Can we show up with answers? Can we show up with, like Darlene did so much work. What are we doing? What's the time frame? You know, when board members stand up there and they're like, I'm gonna argue for Kenneth. Why? Because I'm really curious, because maybe I'm gonna argue for Kenneth. But why? Where's the information? Where's the data? Where's the work?
Well, we're gonna use what we have. I mean, that's, you know, we're not gonna put that to waste, we're gonna take that into account. And I think we've given Jess, you know, free rein right at this point to start asking those top schools, you know, some basic questions. A, can they even take it? So I think we're back in the ring. We got derailed and spent a lot of time on some negative stuff, and I would, for one, like to move forward in the positive fashion, which is where we're trying to go. And
With accountability and transparency?
we just had a meeting right here, right in front of everybody. So yeah, you know, Jess is gonna go off and do some work. You know, hopefully she makes sure that the information she brings back is up to muster, you know, based on other people's input. So we're gonna just move forward and try and figure it out. And that's part of, you know, I'd like to think an open, our goal session, we'll have more conversation as well about that as well, and that's obviously.
As a board, can you commit to having it be a whole lot less messy? Is that a request?
I
That
would
be granted?
That would be my goal. Tish?
Just thinking about this high school options, and should the decision be made to stay with Conway or go to Freiburg as a whole even? Or if you choose, okay, we're gonna go stay with Conway, but say there are people who wanna send their kids to other schools. What then? Because I know state of New Hampshire has school choice, that you can take so much money, and I believe the town has to give the money. Is that correct? Is it, Kevin, would you know that? Like, is it 10,000, is it 15, 20, or no? What is it?
No.
Not even close.
Each town is responsible for educating their child.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
So the town has to choose
You can
a
pay,
choice.
I mean, some schools will pay $45,000, $50,000 a year to educate their children.
Mhm.
But
But
these
the
are all things
state
you gotta
does
find out.
have, I mean, there's education freedom accounts, right, that you can apply for. Other school districts do have multiple tuition agreements.
Okay.
So you just have to be careful about the equitability, right?
Sure. Mhm.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. You can't say, for some kids you can do this, and other kids you can't.
That's our big concern, and then obviously, you know, just to Jerry points out, you know, each time we forget in the room with our own kids, but it's the whole community has to pay. You know, so how's that gonna look? Yeah.
A couple of things. So first, I appreciate your concern for the, that the greater community should be a part of the discussion. And I think that it's really too bad that none of the public forums have been held, because I think that would be a great opportunity that you could make sure to publicize in such a way that a broad swath of the community was welcomed to give their input to you, so that that can be part of the decision. I also wanted to just note that I think there may be some confusion about the current school charter around transportation, because Jackson is currently sending money to a school and that school does not provide transportation. And so in the scope, because it's the Northeast Woodland Public Charter School, and they do not transfer students, but the town of Jackson or through the SAU is sending money to that school. So I think that as from an equity point of view is an important area to just understand what the current agreements already are and the equitability that you've already agreed to on one level to be explored. As far as cost, I just want to note again that when we're talking about the cost of sending a student somewhere, Jackson taxpayers are paying $31,000 per student to send them to Kennett. It is like almost half that to go to Freiburg and many other private institutions. So I guess I just want to make sure that we're considering how much we're already paying, and if we want to continue the Kennett contract, really working on that Kennett contract also, because they should be done side by side to better understand those costs and to really communicate transparently how much Jackson's paying to go to Kennett, and make sure that that's part of the discussion. Finally, I wanted to just ask that if it's possible to make the New Hampshire SBA meeting available in a more easily accessible location. It was hugely informative to be able to attend that meeting via Zoom, even though I didn't see it outside. I certainly didn't see the Zoom location posted outside. The Zoom location was also not on the SAU website that I could find as feedback. But if it could be posted, it was so helpful to learn about. And I think that part of what you're describing in your frustration about roles really would benefit a lot of the community to better understand those roles through attending meetings like the one we had.
Yes, we'll send it out again, I think.
The recording was sent out.
The recording was sent out. The link to the recording was sent out. We can do it again, but it was sent out.
Sent out how?
Through school newsletter.
So one of the, this is why we've gotten into trouble with this stuff. And it's why engaging here can be troublesome, because, and why we probably shouldn't respond to the community when it comes to show up, because we're a board. We can only give answers as a board. I can state my opinion about things, but when people in the public continue to make false statements about things, it's difficult for us to respond contemporaneously because we don't know what the board thinks and how it feels. I'm going to suggest as a board that we just follow our policy. We have public comments, we don't respond, we don't engage. And even during the meeting, when we're on our agenda, it's our agenda items, it's not the public comment section. We should just have to conduct our business, and if we do that, we'll be more transparent. The community will understand us better. Because when false statements get made out there, we can't, it's hard for us to correct them right now, and maybe sometimes that's not even the best thing. So sometimes not responding when someone makes false statements is just the best policy, because then we can just move on and continue to conduct our business. And it's difficult to engage this way because we can't do it very well. I don't think we should anymore. I think that we should just follow our agenda. We have a public comment session. We don't respond to public comments. Is those things we need to respond to at the next meeting? We'll respond to them then as a board when we can properly analyze and engage them as a board, as opposed to doing it this way. It's not working very well.
That's been the advice of every attorney that's ever given you.
So hard.
Yeah, it is
So
really hard.
I just want to walk through what that would look like, because there's a piece that I'm missing here, right? So public comments happen, we don't respond to them, but then somehow at the next meeting, we respond to the ones that we think we should have responded to by doing it, by talking together about how to respond to them.
Well, because it's legitimate for people to ask questions.
No, totally, I'm just saying, what I'm missing is this, there's a process during which we communicate which comments need to be responded to, but that happens somehow publicly, but not so that we're ready to talk about it.
But Kevin is going to get information about a question that somebody asked, and we'll get back to it at the next meeting.
Okay, but how, so
So
5 comments are made, no
Yes.
responses are given.
Or we can say, we need to follow up on that.
Okay, so comment 1 is made, it's like, and I can raise my hand and say, that's concerning to me.
Learn.
No, I understand, but I'm literally trying to understand
Yeah.
kind of what that really means as a layout, because when you're saying, you know, so a comment is made, and we can't just wink at Kevin and have him know that he should do something with it. We need to say, so the, you know, as they're made, say, hey, this is concerning, can we look into this, and can we come back to it? Because I'm like, it's literally about what we're seeing, how this happens.
One strategy might be to train the public. The first set of citizen comments. If there are questions that the general public has regarding the agenda, they can pose those questions. They can talk about agenda items. I hope that when you accept the donation for the Gibson Woodbury Foundation, that it goes towards whatever it happens to be. I'd like greater detail about the posting of the agendas. Then as that comes up during the agenda, because Jerry's right, this is really your meeting, and it's become counterproductive to get into the back and forth. And that just happens, right? You're not at a place where that does take place. And then, if there are questions, I'll provide Dr. Glazer with the retirement payment, right?
So those questions frame the way the meeting, like additional points that can be made during the meeting. Okay, following, yeah.
Yeah.
And then what about the public comment section at the end?
You just type them in.
So the hard part is it's public comment, right? And there are other forms for questions, because you're getting you're getting accused either through letters or other means of doing some things. And that's hard. That's hard to sit and take. You're public officials, and you do get that. But if there are points of clarity that can be brought up that you feel confident and comfortable as a board to address, or not, you can prepare that for the next meeting.
Okay, but I'm gonna keep going here, because if we do that and we talk about what we think needs to be clarified, that in and of itself is a public discussion. So if this is the time for us to have that public discussion, how do we magically talk about what needs to be clarified without actually doing it?
So like you have, it was decided at the last meeting took place, posting of agendas on board discussion in response to the citizen letter. You have the dialogue tonight in a public setting. That's your conversation that needs to take place in a public setting. That's the way it should be done. It becomes uncomfortable because you have difference of opinions on how you should tackle that project, right? How are you going to respond to the citizen letter? Well, some people feel as though they were personally attacked by unfairly. You have other people who are empathetic to the general public who are saying, hey, kind of get where you're at. And then you have some people who are in the middle going, I just want it to go away, and can we get back to moving forward? But you're on the board, and you have to have that dialogue, because that's where it needs to take place in public. So if there's something that needs to go on the agenda for work discussion, then it should go on the agenda.
Okay, so I'm gonna plain speak that out to see if I get this right. So public comment is made. We don't, at the end, take two. Public comments at the start, we address them if we can, the agenda. Public comments are made at the end of the meeting, and if one of them were like, okay, thank you, we hear you, and then I would write a note and I would say, hey, Kevin, I want to make sure that we put on the agenda the principal payout. And then you put that on the agenda, you present, and we talk about it. So the only next step is for me to flag in my head, these are the 5 public comments that I think are worth us jumping in on. And we're all giving that input just to use an agenda item.
The meeting is not over after citizen comments. You as a board can hear what people have said.
Yeah.
And you can discuss, once again, boy, that we need to address that. Can we discuss that at the next meeting?
Got it.
The meeting's not over until it's over.
Okay, so we could do that right away and just say, hey, these are the
You
things,
could.
we're not engaging back, but we're saying, hey, I heard from this general area over here, this is concerning to me, would like this to be on the agenda for next time, so we have space to talk
And
about
then
it.
the board may say, I don't think we need to place that on the agenda, right? So
Conversation, yeah.
that's where, but that's the board work, that's the transparency.
Yeah, no, that's, so thank you all, I'm sorry, it's like, I feel like we're at this space where we need to be really clear about how this happens, otherwise, we're not getting there.
Otherwise, right, I think better, halfway there.
Yeah.
So I'll share, when I was on the school board as a teacher in Connecticut, and I sat there for 3 years, I was just giving a report, but school board members were not allowed to answer.
Right.
It went through the chair, and then the chair said, thank you for that, we'll take that and address it. and most likely at the next meeting, that it happened. Trying to think back, as far as discussions, there were discussions, but they were not this back and forth that's been here. I personally like to know information, and I am, that's kind of sensitive, talkative person, but they were not response at all to the people. People stood there, they gave their name, their address, what their comment was, and it was the chair's responsibility to answer.
So what we can do, once we leave here tonight, we can't talk about this.
We don't.
We can talk about anything else, we can't talk about anything to do with the school district. But we can talk with them.
Right.
And engage with them out there. We can't make decisions based on, we can't say that, we can't tell them things that aren't within our authority to tell them, but we can engage and we can particularly listen to them. I mean, for instance, if Dr. Glazer is willing to talk to me after the meeting, I can clarify some of the questions that he had. I mean, and that's an easy example, because that's a really good question. That's the kind of question that people should be coming and asking us about clarification on.
But wouldn't that be a better thing to be able to share with the whole public than just James?
Not necessarily, because it's his question, it's just a part of it that I can clarify some of the background on for him anyway. And I'll talk to anybody else who wants more information about that too. It might be, some of it isn't the easiest thing to talk about in public necessarily, but it's, that's how you can engage afterwards. Just be providing background information. This is how that occurred back then. The logistics of it, when Kevin presents at the next meeting, like what happened, that's what the public has a right to know, and that's what they should know. And there'll be an answer for it.
I think Jerry's saying you're still approachable.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, is that there's no reason we can't talk to these people out in the meeting as much as we want to about any of this. That can be really hard sometimes, and difficult to navigate as an individual, and no one has to do that necessarily. But it is one way that we can continue to engage with the community.
Okay, just to clarify, because so if we have questions or concerns, you are asking that we ask them at the citizen comments at the beginning. Is that correct?
If they're about the
If they're
agenda.
about the agenda, I mean, we want you to.
The way almost every board in the
It's
state
just-
works, and in most states, is that so you have public comments at the beginning, and those are designed to, if you have something that you have a comment towards something that's going to be on the agenda, okay?
Bring it up.
Then that's when you can bring it up. Our public comments here, by law, are restricted to only school district matters. So you can come here and talk about the school district if you want to, and you can just make comments if you want to. But if you have questions about things on the agenda, you can ask those. Sometimes they're going to be, and this is where it's difficult, and that's why we should just rely on the chair or the superintendent. If it's something that can be clarified immediately, there's no reason why it can't be. Then they can do that probably. But that's not a back and forth thing. I wouldn't say anything, or Mike wouldn't say anything, but like Jen, as the chairperson, might say something in response to it. This is a simple clarification, like, oh, this is what that meant. And then it's done and we can move on. And then you have public comments at the end of the meeting, because then if there was things that happened during the meeting that you didn't understand, then you can again ask a question about something that you didn't understand that happened during the meeting. I didn't understand what you meant by that or this, or hey, I don't like the direction that you're going with the playground. I want you to be going in this direction. That kind of stuff. So after you've heard what we've had, the business we conducted, then you can comment towards it or have questions about it. And that's how that's supposed to operate.
But you're saying you will answer those questions if you feel like it at the next meeting?
No. If we can, we will, if we can make it, but yes, we'll be taking in your information. And then if it's something that we have to get back to you on, or the board has to discuss, then we will put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
I can
Go ahead.
take a stab at it. I would recommend we make this very simple and share it out. And for, just is this what we're saying? Because instead of having it be policy speak, be like, here is a template for how we're doing this. Because it would sure help me. And I was just trying to take some notes on that. And I think it might help all of us. It's like, here you go. Welcome to how we do public comments at the Jackson Grammar School Board meeting. And let's give it a go so that people actually have something. So I will try to draft that and circulate it for people to individually respond to.
But also it's a recommendation, because as the public, we have right to, as long
Yeah, it's more like, here's, like, this is the flow, and let me try it. Let me see if it's something that even all of us can say, yes, that makes sense, and if so, then we can share it out to try to just, in the interest of clarity and community engagement.
Mike, I think it's a great idea.
Uh-huh.
And you don't need to share it with us until the next meeting. But you want to share it with other people out there to see what they think. That probably be better. It's like what I think about it isn't really as important as what they think about it.
See, if I wait to the next meeting, then nobody gets, it just pushes the ball down the road so flipping far, because it's like 3 meetings away
That's gonna be the problem.
when we're actually doing it.
But you can't share that information.
Right.
Even individually.
Even
That's a
if
change.
Yeah.
So that's
Just
why you
need to
can.
bring it to the next meeting.
Thank you.
It's gonna be hard. I have some major work to do with not engaging and engaging.
I think Nicole had something to say.
Oh,
when
we
you
have
said
more.
before, but- Do you have a comment?
So it's there for weeks.
I have a couple questions about school choice as far as, like, someone had mentioned the bus and being 2 different buses, but just from the short time I've been here, it seems like one school is just 15 minutes further down the road than the other school. If say you were looking at Freiburg and Kennett, and the school schedule seems to be off by either 15 to 30 minutes on either side, so I feel like I feel like that question hasn't been answered for the public yet, as far as whether you need multiple buses. I do like that you're considering transportation as like a non-negotiable from an equity standpoint, and also special ed considerations. I do think that's really important for the community, so I applaud you for doing that. And I'd also like to say that I would love to volunteer to help in any way I can, do the research and put stuff together for, in an easily digestible way, because I'm brand new, and so if I can understand it, then
I'll introduce you to Jess, I'll mention that to Jess. She's, I mean,
I told Nicole she shouldn't.
So,
Get
Micah,
in touch,
I know.
so,
sorry, okay.
reach
Thank you.
out.
All right, sorry,
We get Nicole's,
Darlene, I'm gonna address.
yeah, get Nicole.
You guys are supposed to engage, the chair is supposed to engage. Thank
I'm
you,
engaging
Nicole.
with Michael.
We'll get your information, and I will connect you with Jessica.
perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I have to do my learning too, so,
Yes.
okay.
No, this
Thank
is
you.
totally new to me, so.
Just part of this is me doing this, so. All right. Any other citizen comments? Thank you all for sticking it out. I appreciate it.
You have to sign.
Just like accountability doesn't help.
And it's
We have to
25.
sign everything. Oh, Jessica?
My millipedes.
No, not public. Adjourn. Motion.